At our family BBQ last summer, my husband's sister, Ashley, laughed and said, "If you vanished tomorrow, no one would even care." Everyone at the table, even my husband, Eric, chuckled along. I froze, a plate of food in my hand, feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. My name's Lauren, I'm 37, and that moment made me realize something I'd been ignoring for years. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Comment below if you've ever been the outsider, and let me know. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? I'm Lauren, 37 years old. It's been 7 years since I married Eric. Stepping into a family I once thought would give me a sense of belonging. Yet I always felt like someone standing outside a glass door, looking into a world where everything was arranged so carefully and tightly that there was no room left for me. Last summer, at the traditional BBQ hosted by Robert, my father-in-law, I still held on to a fragile hope that maybe, this time, things would be different. I had spent days preparing, from choosing a modest floral dress that matched the party's color theme to making a special dessert, a strawberry shortcake based on my grandmother's recipe, the one that had received a few polite compliments last year. The lawn behind Victoria's, my mother-in-law's house, was as perfect as always. Every flower bed trimmed neatly, gleaming wooden tables and chairs arranged under the shade of trees, and the hearty laughter of guests echoing amidst the faint scent of grilled meat. I placed my cake on the side table, where Victoria pointed with a polite yet unmistakable tone. "Thank you, dear, but this time we already have the bakery taking care of it." I smiled, gently placing the cake down, trying not to reveal the disappointment in my eyes. At that moment, Eric was engaged in an animated conversation with Robert about the company's expansion plans. Ashley, his younger sister, approached with a wine glass in hand, her confident demeanor making it seem as though the entire party was organized just to celebrate her. I tried to share a bit of news about a design project I had recently completed, the first one after months of pausing my work to focus on family matters. Just a few hesitant sentences, and Ashley cut me off with a half smile, her voice sweet but sharp as a knife. "If you disappeared tomorrow, I bet no one would even notice." The words dropped into the air like lemon juice on an open wound. Around me, laughter erupted. Not outright mocking, but enough to make me feel small and invisible. Even Eric, who should have defended me, just gave a light chuckle without a single word in my support. I didn't cry, nor did I storm off. Amidst the laughter, I raised the hot dog in my hand, slowly lifted my glass, and looked straight into Ashley's eyes. "Challenge accepted," I said, my voice calm but resolute. The laughter gradually faded, replaced by a fleeting look of embarrassment on her face. Victoria hastily changed the subject. Robert called everyone over to admire his new imported grill, but I didn't hear any of it. In that moment, under the blazing summer afternoon sun, I realized this was no longer a place where I belonged. That night, while Eric was engrossed in conversation with his father about the upcoming business trip, I quietly packed my belongings. I only took what was truly mine: a few sets of clothes, my laptop, my design toolkit, and a small photo frame of my mother and me from my childhood. I left a letter on the kitchen table, next to my wedding ring, and a handwritten note with Ashley's words, clearly marked with the date, as if it were the final evidence of the exhaustion I had once tried to swallow. No tears, no anger, just a heavy silence, as if I were packing 7 years of trying to fit into a single suitcase. And then I stepped out of Eric's house, out of the world of parties and bitter laughter, out of the role of the dutiful wife, to find myself again. I left Eric's house without looking back, carrying only a small suitcase and an old photo frame. That night, I rented a small room in a roadside motel. The white painted walls were peeling, the smell of bleach mixed with dampness, but I didn't care. At least here, I could breathe without needing to bow my head and ask for permission. I sat on the edge of the bed, my phone resting on the bedside table, the screen dark. Messages from Eric came in one after another, repeating the same phrases. Where are you? Lauren, what's going on? It was just Ashley joking around. You're overreacting. I watched the screen light up and go dark, light up and go dark, mirroring the chaotic beat of my heart. I didn't reply. I let the questions, the justifications, even the pleas dissolve into long silences. The next morning, as pale sunlight filtered through the window blinds, I got up early, splashed cold water on my face to shake off the headache from a sleepless night. I opened my laptop, logged into the old work platforms I had neglected for so long, the networking sites, the unfinished design projects I once loved. The old profiles were still there, just a few tweaks away from being reactivated. I began sending out proposals, carefully edited portfolios, letters of introduction to potential clients. A vague fear crept into every click that perhaps I had been away from the world too long, that no one would remember me. But at the same time, a tiny glimmer of hope flickered amid the doubt. I still had myself. I still had the ability to create something beautiful. 3 days later, I received a response from a small cafe on the corner. They needed someone to redesign their menu board, to refresh the shop's branding to attract more customers. I accepted immediately, even though the pay wasn't high, just enough to cover rent and a modest meal. But it was the first job I had secured for myself since leaving Eric. I threw myself into the work as if clinging to a lifeline in the ocean. During the day, I sketched, colored, and adjusted every detail on my computer. At night, I wrote plans for each small project, carefully noting them in an old notebook, rearranging the life that had once been upended. In moments of fatigue, I thought of Olivia, my sister, the only one in the family who had ever reached out when I was at my lowest. I called her on a rainy afternoon, my voice trembling with pent-up emotion. "Hey." I left. I'm in a completely new place. Olivia was silent for a few seconds, then said gently, "I always believed you would find yourself. Just keep going, Lauren." Those words were like a small flame warming me during long, lonely nights. I found a tiny apartment in a modest neighborhood, not luxurious, not perfect, but mine. Every morning when I woke up, I made myself breakfast, brewed a cup of coffee, and opened my laptop to start the day. The work gradually became more stable, small projects piling into a busy schedule. Clients began referring me to their friends. I learned how to negotiate, how to decline unreasonable requests, how to say no without feeling guilty. And then, one evening, while tidying up the little apartment, I opened a drawer and found the letter I had once written to Victoria, my former mother-in-law, for her birthday. I had written it with all sincerity, hoping to mend the gap between me and Eric's family, but the letter was still in its envelope, unopened, like a symbol of their neglect. I held the letter, a brief wave of bitterness passing before it faded into a gentle smile. They hadn't opened the letter, but I had opened the door to my own freedom. I didn't need their validation to know my worth. The Lauren of today is no longer someone who depends on others' approval. I no longer bow my head to Ashley's jabs or try to please Victoria and Robert. I've learned to stand tall, to confidently say, I am myself, and I deserve something better. The busy days filled with small projects gradually helped me forget the old haunting memories, but the shadow of the past still crept into my restless dreams. One afternoon, while I was sitting and editing a design for a new bakery, my phone vibrated. It was an email from Westwood Creative, a reputable design firm I had once dreamed of collaborating with. "We've reviewed your recent projects and are very impressed. We would like to invite you to participate in a logo design competition for a new consumer brand, Sheffield Consumer Brands. This competition has the potential to open up long-term collaboration opportunities." I read and reread every line. Sheffield Consumer Brands? The name sounded familiar. Then it hit me. Sheffield was a subsidiary of Roberts, my ex-father-in-law's corporation. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, telling myself it was probably just a coincidence. But as I scrolled through the list of their potential clients, I recognized many familiar names, all tied to Eric's old family. At that moment, a cold realization ran down my spine. Perhaps my appearance in this competition was not entirely coincidental. Part of me wanted to withdraw, to avoid being dragged back into the old cycle, to keep my new life untainted by stains from the past. But another part of me, the part that had learned how to stand up, that had learned how to say no, whispered, "This is a chance to prove your own worth." I decided to accept. I began spending hours researching the market, sketching ideas, experimenting with colors and shapes to create a unique brand identity with a strong personal touch. I worked late into the night, a cup of cold coffee by my side, the soft yellow glow of the desk lamp illuminating the lines that were gradually coming together. When the final design was submitted, I didn't expect any results. I only knew I had done my best, and this time no one, not even Ashley or Victoria, could deny my effort. A week later, I received a message from Jessica, the only friend who had always supported me since the beginning. "Lauren, you have to see this," with a link to a post on a marketing blog. I clicked on the link, my heart racing. On the screen appeared an article titled, "An Unknown Talent Behind Sheffield Consumer Brand's New Brand Campaign." In the article, my design was featured with glowing praise. The author had discovered that the person behind the design was not one of the big names in the creative world, but an independent designer who had just re-emerged after a long hiatus. But what stunned me was the last part of the article. According to internal sources, this project was once subject to an intellectual property dispute between the creative team and an individual previously associated with Sheffield's senior management. However, thanks to the talent and perseverance of designer Lauren, the project was restored to its rightful value. I put the phone down, my mind a swirl of emotions. The truth was gradually surfacing. Ashley, with the backing of her family, had tried to claim my work as her own, attaching it to her accomplishments. But this time, I was no longer the Lauren who silently endured. I sought out an intellectual property lawyer, bringing all the documents to prove my authorship, from the initial sketches, file save dates, to email exchanges with Westwood. The lawyer, a middle-aged woman named Margot with bright eyes and a firm voice, flipped through each page, then looked up and said, "Lauren, you not only have enough evidence to protect your copyright, but you could also demand compensation if you wish." I shook my head, giving a calm smile. "I just want everything to be recognized truthfully. I don't need their money, only for my voice to be heard." Margot nodded, her eyes shining with admiration. "That's true strength." The next day, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was Eric. His voice was hurried, almost panicked. "Lauren, this is blowing up online. Ashley is being criticized for plagiarism. They're saying you're the real designer. Can you help her? She's falling apart." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. In that moment, I realized they only came to me when everything had already fallen apart. Before this, they ignored me, pushed me out of their perfect family picture. Now they needed me to salvage their reputation. "Eric," I said slowly, my voice calm but resolute, "I'm not doing this to save Ashley. I'm doing it to protect my own worth, to prove that I'm no longer someone who can be erased from the perfect picture you all created. From now on, I will not be silent." I hung up, my hands trembling but my eyes clear. For the first time in years, I felt strong and unafraid to face the truth. The next day, as I stepped into my familiar workspace, a small corner with a light-colored wooden desk and a collection of plants I tended myself, Margot called. Her voice was calm, but tinged with urgency. "Lauren, I just received some information. Ashley's side, likely under pressure from the spreading scandal, has filed a request to halt all projects related to your design. They're also trying to spin a story that the concept was a result of collaboration, not solely your independent work." I clenched the phone tightly, but I no longer felt fear. Instead, a cold wave of resolve surged within me. "Do you have a way to handle this, Margot? We'll issue a formal response with all the evidence you've provided, and if necessary, I'm ready to present these files in court." Her voice was steady. I exhaled in relief. This time, I'm not backing down. That evening, I opened my laptop, placed on the table the original sketches, the email exchanges with Westwood, and the copyright document bearing Sheffield's signature that Margot had helped notarize. I recorded a video, no makeup, no fancy lighting, just me, with a calm yet firm voice. "Hello, I'm Lauren. I'm not someone who talks much about myself, but today I need to clarify one truth. The design chosen for the Sheffield Consumer Brands Project was entirely my own work. Here is the evidence. Every line, every sketch, every piece of an idea shaped from countless nights of hard work." I displayed each document on the screen, reading aloud the dates, signatures, and stamps of verification. My eyes no longer showed confusion, but instead shone with a glint of strength. This isn't an accusation, but a statement of my own rights. I'm not asking for anything except rightful recognition, and I won't let anyone continue to erase my hard work. The video was uploaded, without dramatic music, without sensational hashtags. Just me, a woman once deemed invisible, now speaking her own truth. As the video began to spread, comments flooded in, from old friends, clients, to strangers who had used my designs without knowing who was behind them. "Thank you, Lauren, for bravely speaking out. This is a lesson about value and self-respect. I've been through something similar. Your story inspires me." A week later, Sheffield sent an official letter to Westwood affirming that the design copyright belonged to me and cutting all ties with Ashley and her media team. Margot called me, her voice filled with satisfaction. "Lauren, we won." But this victory didn't fill me with glee. Instead, it was a deep sense of peace, like when you finally emerge from a long storm, standing under a clear sky, breathing deeply. That weekend, while browsing the local farmers market, I unexpectedly ran into Ashley. She no longer had her usual air of arrogance, but stood quietly by a vegetable stall, holding a bundle of kale. Seeing me, she hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward. "Lauren," Ashley said softly, "I know I was wrong. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but thank you for not staying silent. You made me realize a lot." I looked at her, no longer angry. I simply nodded. "Thank you for saying that. We don't need to be friends, but I hope you'll learn to respect others and yourself." Ashley remained silent for a moment, then turned away. I stood there, watching her figure fade into the crowd. A part of me felt a sense of relief, not because she apologized, but because I was no longer the Lauren of the past, no longer someone trying to please everyone by silently enduring. I had learned how to stand tall, to speak clearly, and to protect myself. And for the first time in many years, I truly felt free. One late autumn morning, I stepped into my small workspace, a bright room with windows overlooking a bustling street corner. On the desk, my laptop lit up with a flood of emails from new clients. Sheffield had officially become a long-term client, not just stopping at the initial project, but also proposing that I help develop brand identity for several other product branches. Margot sent me a scanned copy of the completed paperwork. The copyright confirmation had been registered and published, protecting all the designs I had ever created. At the corner of the screen, a message from Eleanor from the cafe that morning popped up. "Lauren, stop by sometime. I've saved a batch of freshly baked goods for you. The new team would like your support on some items for the grand opening of the new branch." I smiled, realizing that my work now wasn't just about designs on paper, but about connection, about affirming my own value through each project. In the evening, I sat by the window, watching the yellow streetlights reflect on the glass. I picked up a pen and wrote in my old notebook, the notebook I had taken with me the day I left Eric's house, serving as a witness to my determination for change. Perhaps the real challenge isn't leaving, but learning to stand on my own 2 feet, no longer letting others define my worth, no longer staying silent when belittled, no longer accepting the shadow others impose. This is my life, Lauren's life, 37 years old, a woman who has found her voice and her true freedom. On the desk, next to the notebook, was a handwritten letter from Olivia, the only one who had ever held me tightly during my hardest days and reminded me that family isn't just about bloodlines. I picked up the letter and reread the slanted words. You always deserve love, not because you're perfect, but because you are yourself. A week later, I received an invitation to an international creative conference where design and business experts shared stories of overcoming challenges. When I stepped onto the stage, the spotlight shone on me, not to make me perfect, but to reflect my true self, the woman who had once been erased from her family's picture, but had redrawn her life's canvas with the boldest colors. When I looked down at the audience, I saw Olivia sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. Eleanor gave a small wave, and Margot nodded in congratulations. The world I once thought I didn't belong to was now opening its arms to welcome me. And as the stage lights gradually dimmed, I realized that I didn't need a perfect ending, because this journey wasn't about seeking validation from those who once looked down on me. It was about learning to validate myself, love myself, and live true to my real worth. Lauren not only turned the challenge, "If you disappeared, no one would care," into a lesson on self-respect, but also rebuilt her life with courage and unwavering faith. Lauren's journey isn't just the story of a woman standing up after being hurt, but a reminder that each of us has the right to define our own worth. Thank you for accompanying this story. Have you ever experienced the struggle of fighting to be recognized for your true worth? Share your story in the comments below. I look forward to hearing from you. Leave a comment sharing your experience, and don't forget to subscribe so we can continue to spread inspiring stories of strength and rebirth.